Okay, so in this video, I'm going to show you how to create a nutrient management plan on the FarmEye system. So if you scroll over here on the left-hand menu, if you click under soil, once you have the farm selected, and then click down the bottom, nutrient management plans. Now, you can create a new plan here. So this shows you the list of previous plans. So if we click create new plan, you can select the type of plan, whether it's a gloss plan, a nitrates derogation plan, or a fertilizer plan. So we'll call this a nitrates plan for the moment. The plan will be named Nitrates 2020, and the year is 2020. And then we click next. So county, we're going to select here Galway and plan year 2020. So you select the farm enterprises here on the first settings page. So in this farm, we're going to select dairy and sheep. And you also have the option here in the settings of specifying the units that you wish to deal with in terms of land area and volumes for slurries. Now, it's very important here to enter the previous year's livestock organic N figure for the farm. This is to calculate the farm nitrogen and phosphorus allowances. So this total organic livestock N, it's important that you put in the total for the farm for the previous year. So it's not the rate per hectare, it's the total rate or the total amount of N. So we'll just put in 2,000 and we'll say it was a 10 hectare farm, which it wasn't, but that gives us the previous grass stocking rate, previous year's grassland stocking rate of 200 kilos per hectare. Now, generally, you'll tick this box over to here to say that the farm was in derogation in the previous year. Obviously, it's deselected in the case where you have a brand new farm going into derogation and they were not previously in derogation in the previous year. And this box here is checked to avail of P buildup. Okay, so that's the settings tab. The next tab is feed. On the feed tab, you can enter the tons of concentrate feed which were fed on the farm last year. So we call dairy nuts and we'll say 80 ton. And that's saved and entered there with the P value of 400 kilos in that imported concentrate feed. In terms of crops, then that's the next tab. So on this tab, you have the map of the farm, and at this point you can zoom in and select crop type. So on the right hand side here, you'll see the drop down. When you click that drop down, you have the option of specifying various grassland crops. Also, there are some of the gloss crops in there, traditional hay meadow and low input pasture, and down at the bottom then arable crops. So I'm just going to select the grazing fields first by clicking this. And then I'm going to click the fields which are grazing. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so grazing fields are selected. And then I'm going to select silage fields. So 4 silage fields selected there. Okay. Now there are a number of other fields on this farm. So if I click center on farm, it will bring me to the other fields which are here. And this is also a silage field here. Now these 2 fields are actually wild bird cover. So I'm going to select arable crop here. These 2 fields are arable, okay? And then I want to specify what exact arable crop they are. So I'm going to click on View Field Detail. And that brings up this separate pop-up down here on the lower right of the table. So I can select here the crop. So it's gloss, wild bird cover, oats. And then similarly for this field here, View Field Detail. And this one is also gloss, wild bird cover, oats. Okay. And center on farm again. Okay, so now all the crop types have been specified. If I want to change, for example, the silage fields are defaulting to 1 cut plus grazing. So if I want to change these to 2 cut, I just click on View Field Detail up here, select the field, and then change the number of cuts over here on the right-hand side to 2 or 3, whatever it is, as the case may be. Okay. So the next tab in the nutrient management plan is waste. And this is essentially the waste storage facilities for the farm here. It's divided into 2 tabs. One is for tanks in terms of slurry, farmyard manure storage, or soil water. So I'll just start off here by clicking Add Tank. We'll just call the first one Tank 1. The year of build here, I'm just going to say it was built in 2000. You select the tank type, whether it's storing soil water, slurry, or farmyard manure, and then the pin on the map. I'll come back to that later. That's where you pin the location of the slurry storage or the manure storage facility in the farmyard on the map. Whether it's covered or uncovered is important when it comes to calculating rainfall. The geometry of the tank goes in here, and then the dimensions. So particular tank we're going to say is 4.5 by 21 by 2.4, and that gives us the calculation here of rainfall allowance, of which there's no rainfall allowance here because it's a covered tank, but there is a freeboard figure of about 19 cubic meters, and the gross volume and the net capacity of that tank, which is 207.9 cubic meters of slurry. We just add a soil water tank as well, and we'll call this tank 2. And we'll say this tank is not covered. Okay, so that's just 2 tanks entered, and if you want to edit these, you just click this little radio button on the left-hand side. It brings back up the pop-up, and you can edit any of those values. So the next tab under waste is soil water calculations. This is where you enter the soil water for milking parlour and collection yard and any other dirty yards where cattle are standing and rain is falling on them over the closed period. So the first thing is to select the destination of the soil water from the milking parlour, whether it's going to a designated soil water tank or into a slurry tank. In this case, we're going to select the slurry tank. You select the age of the tank. So if it's pre-2015, there's just 10 days soil water storage required. Or if it's post-January 2015, then there's 15 days required. So is a pre-2015 tank. The average number of cows to be milked is 80. The number of no milking days during the closed period, so how long is the parlour closed or all cows dry, and that's 30 days, okay? And this calculates then the cubic meters of soil water that are required for that parlour for a 10-day storage period. Alternatively, if it's a newer tank, this will be calculated for a 15-day storage period. The collection yard, then, we're going to say that the collection yard water is also going to the soil water tank. The tank is pre-2015. The area of the yard is 40 square meters, and the yard is washed after each milking. So this is calculating the soil water that's generated from that collection yard over the 10-day period. This is where you enter other dirty yards. There's no other dirty yards in this example. And over here on the right-hand side, then we have our storage requirements and our regulatory compliance check. So this is showing that we have 92 cubic meters of uncovered soil water tank. And our requirement for soil water storage is just 38 meters. So we have a balance of 54 cubic meters to spare in that particular soil water tank, which is good. Now, if I was to change this to a post-2015 15 tank, you'll see there that all of a sudden we have a greater requirement for storage. So now our balance between what's available and what's required is now just 35 cubic meters. But there's still a surplus in terms of storage capacity. So the next tab then is livestock. So I'm just going to very quickly enter here on the right hand side. You have your list on the left hand side of all the livestock categories. So because in the settings tab I selected dairy and sheep, we have our dairy and sheep livestock categories coming up here. So if I select the dairy cow, and the average head count is 80 throughout the year, they are all indoor on slats in the winter period, and none outnumbered. The week's housing will automatically default to the storage period for the county, unless you specify a different volume, or unless you, specify a greater number of weeks housing required for a specific farm. So if I save this, it'll automatically go to 18 weeks housing, assuming that the farm is in County Galway as we specified in the settings tab. I'm also going to enter in here 50 lowland Joes, and I'm going to say they're all outwintered over the winter period. So we also have cattle 0 to 6 months old, an average over the year of 20 of those, and over the winter there are an average of 10 housed on straw, and the straw usage is medium. So that's the calves and the young stock. We also have a number of heifers there. They're in this bracket here of 6 to 12 months old. So we have 10 heifers, and they're housed on slats over the winter as well. They're also an average of 10 and 12 to 18 month heifers as well, also housed on slats. Okay, the next tab is the soil tab. Now this is just showing you a summary of the soil test data. So, and at this point you're not entering any data if the soil tests have already been entered. You can see the P and K indexes over here on the right hand side and the pH values. These little alerts here, these little red exclamation marks, show you that the sampled area in this case exceeds the specified by the regulation. So you see there's a 13 hectares applied to that given soil sample, 9.5 hectares here on this one. So that's obviously something that you need to go back to the soil test tab over here to adjust, or else there's a new soil test required. You see this alert here showing that this particular soil sample here is 3 years old, and therefore it requires a new soil sample. The soil fertility map is showing, I suppose, a summary here of the P and the K status of the farm. So you can see this particular farm is reasonably good for phosphorus, and it's quite low, a lot of index 1 and 2 for potash. You see these new fields here on the top left have not been sampled yet, so they're showing up grey. pH and lime tab is where the liming plan is created. So on the right hand side for each field you can enter the planned tons of lime per hectare. If you want to pull in or to apply the recommended lime from the soil test, if you want to recommend that for each field, you just click on this checkbox here, select all the fields, and then click this apply recommendations button on the bottom left of the screen. And what that does is it pulls the recommended tons of lime per hectare into the planned tons of lime per hectare column, and so that generates your liming plan for each field. The next tab is where the fertilizer applications are planned for each field. So you'll see here that there's an NP and a K value specified for each of these fields. So for field 1 here, 282 kilos per hectare is the nitrogen recommendation, our limit. 26 kilos of phosphorus per hectare and 95 kilos of potassium. As it's an index 1 potash score. So at this point, I can enter the farmyard manure, cattle slurry or sheep slurry. So I'm going to enter the cattle slurry here on the silage fields at a rate of 22 tonne per hectare. Okay, you'll see here on the right hand side now that I have applied, and these little inventory over here, you'll see 209 tons of cattle slurry have now been applied. There's 323 tons remaining to be allocated, so I have to keep going with my slurry applications until that goes to zero. So now I have applied slurry, I think, to all the silage fields. The next thing is I'm going to apply it to the index 1 and 2 fields as well at a slightly lower rate of 18 tonne per hectare. And so on. So you can obviously alter the rate. So you see this particular field here is actually white bird cover, so that's why it has a lower requirement, and I probably shouldn't have put the slurry on that because I'm filling up these little requirement gauges here. You can see this yellow fill of the fuel gauge has come around in this case, in the case of potash, to 61%. So we're supplying 61% of the required potash here from the slurry. Okay, so that's the slurry. There's still a balance of 42 cubic meters, but I would obviously continue on to allocate that to the index 1 and 2 fields ideally. So next up is the chemical fertilizer applications, and if we go to this fertilizer inventory is the first tab. So this is where we add the chemical fertilizers which are most likely to be used by the farmer. So let's select O1020, put in 10 tonne there as stock for the farm. We'll also add in urea and 10 tonne of urea as well, just to start us off. So now when we go to our organic fertilizer applications tab, sorry, we have that completed almost. So the chemical fertilizer applications, this is where we balance the nutrients, the remaining nutrient requirements for each field using the chemical fertilizers. So in this case, I'm going to add 0.2 of a tonne of urea per hectare, and you can see that's bringing us up to 45% of the end requirement. So if I increase that up to 0.45, 450 kilos per hectare, you can see that bringing the end supply there up to 86%. The blue is showing you where the the chemical nitrogen is satisfying the requirement, and the yellow part of that in fuel gauge is where nitrogen has come from the slurry. I'm also going to add a small amount of 10-10-20, or sort of 0-10-20 then to just to raise the P and K status closer to the required levels. In this case, you can see it will take a bit more. So now these two have the font inside of the fuel gauge gone to green because I've reached 97% and 99% respectively for phosphorus and potash supply there for field 1. So this is what you're aiming to do for each field, to bring all the fuel gauges for NP and K up to 100% of the requirements by allocating various rates of chemical and organic fertilizers. So finally, I'm going to show you the compliance tab. Will show you the summary compliance for the farm before you go to generate any reports. So for nitrogen here, you'll see on the right hand side that the nitrogen from chemical fertilizers, or the ones that I have allocated in the plan, is just 971 kilos there in total, which is below my farm maximum. In terms of phosphorus, then the phosphorus table, you'll see that the farm allowed phosphorus figure is 368 kilos. In terms of chemical phosphorus, what I've only planned there from that 0, 10, 20 was 38 kilos. So I'm still below the limit for phosphorus. That also takes account of your concentrate feeds there from above. In terms of the overall regulatory compliance check, this is given a summary here of grassland area, arable area, total eligible area of the farm, total area soil samples. You can see that just 78% of the farm is soil sampled. There's part of the farm there which hasn't been sampled, so index 3 is being assumed. The grassland stocking rate is 262 kilos per hectare per year, which is over the 250 kilos per hectare, which is, actually we're right on the 250 kilos per hectare, as it turns out, for this farm for the year, so right on the nitrates limit. And this final table down here shows you on the right-hand side whether you're compliant, and in which case the word compliant comes up in green, or you're non-compliant, in which case you get a warning in red. So you can see here that for the more than 80% of the farm area is in grassland, which means it's eligible for derogation. And the second requirement is the whole farm stocking rate lower than or equal to 250 kilos organic N per hectare, which we are compliant just about on. The slurry storage here, as you see, is coming up with a capacity deficit. So we need 533 cubic meters of slurry storage capacity. In terms of tanks that I entered as storage facilities, the total of those is only coming up to 208 tons or cubic meters. So there is some further slurry storage required. Similarly for farmyard manure, I didn't enter any farmyard manure storage facility, so that needs to be corrected before this plan can be completed and printed. The soil and water storage, we haven't reached, the plan didn't actually reach the capacity of the tanks that I entered, so we're fine for that, and also for chemical nitrogen and phosphorus in terms of what I had planned in fertilizers. So that's the start to finish in terms of the 8 tabs of 1 to 8 here in terms of creating your irrigation nutrient management plan. The final tab then is the report, and once everything is compliant, you can go on to this stage and print the maps, the farmyard plan, and the actual report itself as separate PDF files.